Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my lovely and talented and raucous and insightful and very insightful co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
I feel all those things at once. Even, I feel what I feel especially is the hesitation between them. That's what I feel the most, is that little awkward, that's what I feel most of the
I
time.
was about to go with like a fancy word. I don't remember which one it was, but I wasn't sure if I was even saying it right. And I didn't want to provide that kind of low hanging fruit for you and the world. So I was like, so I pulled up. So I was like, I'm just going to go with insightful twice. So guess where I am right now, Lance?
Portugal.
Yeah, yes, I'm an hour north of I was about to say Libsyn, which is where we host our podcast.
Mhm.
Anyway, no, I'm not in Portugal. I am, and I actually got a good night's sleep. You wouldn't know it yet. I am at my parents' house up outside of Boston.
Wow, do they know?
They
Where are they?
They left. I told them to leave because I needed to record. This house is there's nowhere to really do it except for kind of right in the middle of the action. So I told my parents and my son to leave. So they just went to grab takeout for lunch and then go play mini golf somewhere. So
I love mini golf. Do you like miniature golf?
I do.
Some people do and some people do not.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
But
I think it's fun.
The first practice session that I ever had in my life was like
For
right
miniature golf
on the other side of that wall. So back in 1984, yes, sir.
Wow,
same
how did
house.
It go?
I was really good.
Yeah.
At making very loud farting noises from my
just
tuba.
like play and then you go, yeah,
pretty much.
You play a little more, you're like, oh yeah.
That actually all reminds me that we need to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium mouthpiece. I pause like I'm doing TEM. I'm rested and I'm prepared and I'm a disaster. Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
That's what's different.
That is
rested and prepared. Throwing everything off.
So this is a listener's choice episode.
Which listener?
There's a few we would definitely not turn the keys over to. If you're wondering if it's you, it probably is. But there are a number that we would. No, we've got from Ryan and Neil, and we've got some options here. So
Ryan O'Neill has asked a question.
Yes, Ryan O'Neill. Yes, we asked we actually got some feedback from our listener survey that people like these listener choice ones, and we haven't had one in a while. So we went to Instagram and to Facebook, and we got some questions. So we're going to answer those right now.
Oh my!
The first question, which is a really good one, is Ryan on Instagram asked if/how your practice routine has changed over the course of your careers.
That's interesting. So I'm going first.
Please.
When I was, mine has ebbed and flowed, and it went from disorganized to organized. And so when I was starting out and all through high school, I just it was a teach to the test deal. If there was something coming up, I would practice, except with one. Well, actually, it was sooner than that. I back up one step. When I first started on the horn, I played all the time. And I've told the story in a number of forums in a number of ways. I had a little bit of a chaotic upbringing. And when I was practicing, it was sacred time for whatever reason. And so I practiced a lot. And so when you have a 6th, 7th, 8th grader who practices a lot, then they get good, which is weird. And then when I got into high school, I got busier with other stuff. And so then I just would practice if there was something coming up. But I had laid a foundation so that I was able to do things. And I also kind of fell in love with the recordings of Leonard Falcone. My teacher shared them with me. And so it didn't really feel, I guess I was practicing, but all I was doing was trying to imitate the recordings that I heard. I
Right.
just heard, I had the music and I just tried to emulate it. It was not structured in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And then, unfortunately or fortunately, I kind of kept that process going through my undergrad and was very haphazard. If I had a recital coming up or a performance coming up, I would practice. Otherwise, maybe not so much. And then when I got into grad school, that was when I decided that being a band director was difficult. Being a music teacher is difficult and time consuming. And so I would rather play.
At least it doesn't pay all that much, and you constantly have to justify the existence of your either full-time position or your position at all to the community and to your administrators.
Yeah.
So don't forget about that added bonus.
Yeah. Well, and the hours are so good, and nobody's ever upset with you. But it was easy to do during COVID. Like that.
But you
was
get
like a
summers
no-brainer.
off.
That's right. It was so easy during COVID to have band practice. Said no one. And so when I went to grad school, then I figured out how to practice. And so I had a great teacher. I had an awesome teacher in undergrad, Phil Cinder. And then it was kind of the 1-2 punch when I got to University of Akron with Tucker Jolly. And I knew I wanted to get into the military band, so I was going to leave no stone unturned. So I really did a deep dive in terms of learning how to learn. And then I applied all of that stuff to myself. Then kind of ebbed when I got into the Air Force Band, sort of more like once you have the gig, then to do the gig is a different sort of thing. So I would prepare for the gigs. I would prepare the music that we were doing. But then in terms of just practicing beyond that, again, if I had something major coming up, that sort of ebb and flow happened as I had auditions or whatever. And then the next time there was a concentrated effort to really dial it in even more than I had done for the Air Force Band, was to get ready for the Boston Brass audition, because I was learning to play the trombone and I was playing way more jazz than I had played up to that point. I'd played a fair amount, jazz style, I should say. And then those principles that I developed for myself, I turned into the Music Practice Coach book. And that's basically been my pattern since then, which is when I'm way more efficient about the practice that I do. I would not say that I am practicing a ton right now, although that needs to ramp up, because I'm going to be recording some music this summer, and the teaching, the semester just ended. So now I have time to redeploy towards this. So it's very simple now because the process is in place. So I just need to flip the switch and go back to doing the things that I need to do.
That was about as exciting as long tones. No,
Hey,
it actually was interesting. Yeah,
not exciting.
No, not exciting.
It's not exciting. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the Pat Sheridan quote from his workshop with For Us, the Tuba workshop, right, where he talked about how you have to have a love of routine. Mm-hmm. You have to develop a love of routine, which if you want to be, an artist, which I think is true. My practice has absolutely changed. When I was young, I did it every day in the room right down the hall here for just a little bit. And then, that kind of started to waver. College, I was absolutely just like you, where it was just, I did it when I needed to. It was like on a, if I had to prepare something, then I prepared it, but that was it. There was like no self-propelled anything at all. It was just like the constant threat of public humiliation. Basically. Now, I played in a ton of ensembles.
That's what I did too.
And I do think that one thing that separated me from some of my peers, and I bet this is not remarkable for professional musicians, but when I was in rehearsals, I took them, like my tuba playing in every single one of those rehearsals, insanely seriously. Like really, really seriously. Like I was, not that I wasn't, maybe enjoying some extracurricular activity during the long stretches when the tubas weren't playing, depending on the ensemble. But when I played, it was almost as if there was a red light on. Like I was really laser focused, and that's always been the way that I have been. So I definitely used every rehearsal to be working on articulation and note releases and getting an even sound and dynamic. It's like they were almost practice sessions, if you will, like if you approach them the right way. Now they're still not nearly as good as actually sitting down, making your own plan, coming up with it, but that added hours of ultra focused tuba playing every single week, whether I had something to prepare or not, to my plate. And then graduate school was also for me when things really kind of caught fire. And that was when I got there, and I think it was just a factor of my age. I think I was finally ready to do that. And Sam Palafian had warm-up class at 7:15 a.m. every Monday through Friday, and I was at school playing from 7:15 until 8:40 every single Monday through Friday. And that was when like things started. And then I also started like taking some auditions and that kind of thing. So that kind of ramped up. And then once I got into Boston Brass, it really was, it reverted back to the college thing where it was just all, it was all dependent on what I had to do when I had new music to learn, or if it was an endurance thing I had to work up, or that kind of thing. That was kind of what fueled me. And on the road, always had to be at my best, like at night. So I certainly wasn't practicing a lot the days of Boston Brass gigs, because those were pretty taxing. And then since I got off the road, when I first got off the road, I didn't practice very much at all because I had a newborn at home, and it just wasn't a priority. Because I had to put some things on hold, and I wasn't. And that was actually when I launched the Entrepreneurial Musician. That's when we launched the Brass Junkies, like when was when he was like around 1 or so. Or did we launch this in 2014? Has this been 6 years, 7 years? Anyway, it was either around when he was born or when he was 1. But when I play gigs, it's good ones. And so when I have to ramp up for one of those, like I got to ramp up like seriously. So now, interesting enough for the timing of this question, this has kind of changed over the last like 3 weeks because of the Inside the Practice Room workshop that I hosted through Hitz Academy with Jeff Nelson of Canadian Brass. I actually now have a practicing journal where I am writing down every single practice session. I am writing down the time that it starts. I'm writing down whether I am playing my XO tuba or the slightly smaller Rudy Meinl or my Yamaha F. I'm writing down exactly how long it is. I'm writing down what I'm playing. I'm even like taking notes of when I'm doing a routine. If I like change the order or what keys I'm doing, whether I'm using drones or what, or a metronome or funk grooves on YouTube. And so I've gotten insanely organized, and I'm not practicing for anything right now. Like there's no major playing anything on the horizon for me right now. Concerts are coming back, but slowly. So I've actually become incredibly focused of late, which is new and kind of awesome. And then I interviewed Michael Sachs as well for Inside the Practice Room a few days ago. His insights were incredible. And the next one, which is May 23rd, Sunday, May 23rd at 8 p.m. is DeMondre Thurman. So, and he was like, ooh, that sounds really interesting. It's like they're essentially a deep dive into, and each of them has actually showed us practicing. Like Michael Sachs practiced Petrushka, which like he showed how he breaks down Petrushka. and it was amazing. Like, I could give a crap how to practice the trumpet solo in Petrushka, but what he did was exactly applicable to what it was really cool. He simplified the thing melodically, and like, using some, like, some signposts to kind of aim for. And then there's like, I think it's Shinkarian analysis, which he didn't use those words. I might be pronouncing that wrong because
Analysis? No, you did it right.
yeah. Okay. Thank you. I didn't go to music theory all that often, but it also wasn't taught very well. That's one of the reasons why. But anyway, moving right along, it was really fascinating watching him break down this thing, like really fascinating. And even just like practicing orchestral excerpts, like, okay, like, I've done that. I can play when I'm in shape with that. I can play all tuba orchestral excerpts really well. I can't do that right now because I haven't given a crap in years, but watching him do that was Jeff Nelson practice the opening to Eulenspiegel, which again, it's like watching the process of how they broke those down was really cool. So you can, but by the way, those two are both available in the Hitz Academy archives if you just go to hitzacademy.com. And then the Demandre one is still available live, and he'll be taking questions from the audience. And there are a number of other people which are going to be scheduled on all the brass instruments and I'm talking to a violinist right now, a bass player. So kind of going wide with it because I'm finding it fascinating. So
I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to this practice thing after I tell you that the Mary Poppert School of Music at Duquesne University is a fine institution in a beautiful and sunny part of the world.
Well played.
It is sometimes beautiful, not always sunny, frequently not sunny, actually on the top 10 of the cloudiest and rainiest cities in the country. Anyway, the Mary Poppert School of Music is a phenomenal organization, and if you click on the link in the show notes, you will be taken to the site, which will show you all the folks you could study with if you came to Duquesne, all the ensembles that you can perform with, and the opportunities therein. We would like to thank them for being such a devoted and long-term sponsor, and a very, very, very special, heartfelt, warm thanks to Jimerson Nova for making that so very possible. So my question to you is, if you were out of shape, say you haven't played for some period of time. So for example, the reason that popped into my head is I'm out of shape. I haven't played in a while. And
if you want a lesson, you should pay for a lesson, Lance.
So which you blow the small end, right?
Yes.
If you're coming back, what's your process for coming back after not having played for a while?
If you're using a Parker mouthpiece, there is no such thing as out of shape.
There's no such thing.
No, it's just, like all this super soft playing, touchy stuff. It's all
Easy.
there. You don't you don't have to put in the work to either obtain or maintain any of the extremities. It's just there. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah. My process for coming back is I try to it kind of depends on if I'm coming back from being out of shape for a specific reason, then I figure out what it is that's going to be hard about whatever I'm coming back for. That there are two things that bail on me the fastest when I neglect them are extreme soft playing and my high register. And then high register combined with soft playing, if I'm super out of shape, is like, flips me the double bird while it laughs. Now, so I got to figure out. So if I'm like playing some sort of like, if I'm playing an Easter gig, I'm not going to have to play, extremely softly, probably, right? So that's not that I wouldn't work on the soft, but that's not going to be like a headline, One thing that I have done for the soft playing, which was again advice from Jeff Nelson in that Inside the Practice Room, is I've been doing 3 octaves worth of long tones chromatically at basically as soft as I can play, which takes about 20 minutes to get through that, and do that for like a week or 2 weeks, and it's like, yeah. And then it's funny, I did that for a week after being completely out of shape with the soft playing stuff. And I then did soft touch in the brass gym for the first time. And it was as good as it's ever is. And I hadn't done that exercise in months, and I hadn't done any articulation exercise, but it was just like built the strength and, all of that.
Would
But
you say the period of time was
for
so it took you a couple of weeks, and then you were a week, and then you
I
felt
did
like that?
I did 1 week, and then of those long tones for the three octaves. And again, it was like super focused though. I was playing with a drone, with my cello drone that I like to play with. And then I was, there was no like baseball game on in the background. It was like really focused on like playing as soft and as in tune and as good a sound as I possibly could. And some of it, especially, up a little bit higher, again, you combine the soft and the high, and I'm out of shape, and it didn't go very well, but it got a lot better quickly, So, in general, I'm focusing on middle register, middle dynamic, and playing musical stuff, like simple. I don't know, Blazevich etudes, Snedeker etudes for tuba, which obviously are designed to go down low. But one of the reasons I love them is because they really kind of hang out in like the middle register, and then they go low, and they go, and sometimes they stay there, but just like playing, response, just getting air moving, playing with a great sound. And then over time, I expand that to the extreme registers and the extreme, dynamics. But that's kind of what I do. And then sometimes I'll just kind of mess around too, play stuff by ear, that kind of thing. But it's and I think it's different for different instruments, but I think a lot of it with tuba is mental, and some of it is like fine-tuning stuff, but a lot of it's mental, and I just try and make great phrasing happen right away, which is easier if it's middle register, middle dynamics. So what about you?
Well, before I answer, so Snedeker's got a Euphonium book coming out. I tested some of the, I don't know, edited, whatever, read through some of the, they're awesome. Like all these different styles, they're just so good. I can't wait. Maybe it's out. I don't know, but they're fantastic.
So I played the other day in one of my practice sessions. I did the last four, Snedekers of his first book, and I hadn't been really working on my low register except for the soft long tones, and then also just like going down there for brass gym, whatever. And they sounded as good as they've ever sounded the other day. Like, yeah, it was just like it, like, yeah, I was again, I'm not saying it sounded good. I'm saying for me, like on a scale of 1 to 10, I always ask students this, on a scale of 1 to 10, with a 1 being your worst today, and then a 10 being the best possible that you could do it today, not compared to your heroes or to the people you're better than, just you. I was hitting like on a 9, like 9.5, like, and I hadn't been really working down in that register, certainly not in that way, in months, because of the pandemic. I've not been that, and so yeah, it was pretty crazy. Yeah.
It's very similar, very similar. It's what is it that I have to do? How much time do I have to do it? I mean, how far out is the date? And then it's only really ever face. It's like my fingers reading, articulation, actually wind to a large degree. Most of that, I don't really have to think too much about that, but it's just like face.
Yeah.
And stamina, particularly. Mm-hmm. Some flexibility, but more stamina than flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
I've never needed it actually used to kind of aggravate JD, I think, because I never really needed to warm up that much, and he was someone who needed a longer routine. And I also do, I completely agree that some of it's just a function of the size of the mouthpiece. We can just get away with murder more than the small mouthpiece folks.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mean to indicate that it was anything other than that, but
mm-hmm.
So then I tend to do, I just know that the first few days back are going to suck.
And not for the first like 8 to 10 minutes though, right?
Well, so that's what I do actually. So I'll have all the horns out that I need, and then I'll just come play for 5 to 10 minutes. And then I'll put it away, and then I'll come back in an hour. Like basically every time I go by the studio, I'll just stop and play through something I'm going to work on, play through a warm up. It could be a Remington or a brass gym, mostly Remington and brass gym and Clark, I guess would be where it's some of the fingers, some of the flexibility, and some of the just the overall stuff that's in brass gym. And then over the next few days, I do fewer sessions that are longer. So it's because I just know it's stamina, and I know I'm going to suck. Like you said, after the 8-minute mark, I'm just going to be swearing. I'm just going to be mad because I can't play. One of my great, we talked about the University of Akron. Bob Jorgensen was the director of bands there, and he was a phenomenal euphonium player. He played in the Coast Army Field Band and studied with Leonard Falcone for his master's degree, and then became more of a band director. And when I was at the University of Akron, I was the band grad assistant, and the tuba grad assistant, and I and my teacher Tucker talked Bob into getting his horn out and playing some tuba euphonium quartet stuff. And it was awesome because he sounded like $1,000,000, and it was awesome because after about 15 minutes, his face was shot, and I just never heard him swear so much, which was just a great treat to hear your mentor kind of let loose, because he was so frustrated that he didn't have any face, but he didn't have any reason to practice. It was just like we dragged him out there to do this. Mm-hmm. So I just know that it's going to suck until I get back in shape. And I would say, I don't know, I generally within 3 days, I'm sometimes depends on a lot of things, but by the third day, I'm pretty much where I need to be. And then I can start to dial in and fine tune either if it's a touchy thing or a high thing or a low thing or most of the stuff that you're doing, it's like Sudoku puzzles. It's like you just got to work out the pattern, and then when the pattern's worked out, then you're cool, and then you can apply the musicality to it.
Yep.
Not that those aren't integrated, but it's just after you've played however many tunes, you start to realize, so this is just this, and now it's this, and this is influenced by that, and so that's it. That's it.
I've got one other thing to say about coming back, which is bring intentionally and consciously bring your patient pants with you. Yeah. Nobody needs to be told, like, if you're really out of shape, that you need to make sure you're patient. Of course, but it's the kind of thing where it helps me to like remind myself literally, like, okay, so this is, I used to, in my younger days, I would get frustrated by lots of things that I could not control. Like I would get on, this is long before Waze or traffic reports, right? And I would just get on 66 in DC, and it would just like at a random time, there would just be like horrific traffic. And by the way, now that there's like Waze, like living in a place like DC is like 100 times easier than when you did, like 100 times, because you have data, you go around. It's like it's shockingly easier than what you dealt with. But I would just get really upset, like, why it's a Saturday at 9 a.m. This is like not when, but there's an accident. It's like, so now I'm just like, hey, guess what? There is occasionally traffic on really, really congested highways. Same thing with practicing. I need to go in like telling myself to be patient. So
yeah, well, and leaving guilt at the door as well. Like, oh, I should have been doing this for the last the more I meditate, and actually that's the thing I need to go back to too. I've been a little lazy in the last month.
I can tell.
These attachments to our expectations of what we ought to be able to do is a really tricky. That's kind of that next level of it, which is just realizing what attachments you have. And if you're attached to what you used to be able to do before you took this period of time off or before you had the injury, it's going to slow you down. If you just accept that in this moment today, this is what I'm able to do, and for about this long, and just realize that that's what it is, and then go about your day. Yeah. Then keeps that frustration level, it keeps it more in check. It's always, ready to pounce, but
the word should is a red flag always. Anytime that I'm using the word should, and it's always easier, by the way, to identify that in other people, like in my students or in my TEM coaching clients or whatever. or in you and my business partner, right? It's like anytime I hear you say, "Oh, this should have," like I can, and you don't say that often, but like I'll notice it right away. But when I say it,
Yeah, I
it's
should
like
stop doing
I
that.
when I say it, it's just it's very easy for me to not recognize that I'm the one doing it, which is kind of, that's why we take lessons. That's why we have mentors. That's why we have business coaches. That's why we have all of that stuff. So, speaking of mentors, although this one happens to just be one of our jackass friends, Patrick Sheridan, who is kind of like a mentor to me. Please do not tell him that. If anyone tells him that, I will be very mad, and I have follow through on my on on getting even with people. If you go to patricksheridan.com, guess what he has announced, Lance LaDuke?
He's going to grow hair.
That's that is one thing that he does not mentor me in. The Brass Gym virtual workshop.
Finally,
June 14th to 18th. Lance has been trying to get Pat to do an online version of this since like the late 70s. So that's why if you sense a little hostility, it's because it's like, he's been harping on it for almost 45 years. June 14th to 18th. If you go to patricksheridan.com and you click on the link, it will take you. It looks incredible. It's 5 days worth. It's going to be available online afterwards. It's really good stuff. So go check. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm really, really excited. And it's not just 5 days of breathing exercises. He's going into the how, the why, it's like how to integrate all of it. It's going to be spectacular. He's one of the best teachers. It's funny. Pat and I are friends. Like when he's older than me, but when I was introduced to him by Sam, it was actually at a studio party at Sam's house. Like we were colleagues, if you will, even though he was older and much more successful. But it wasn't like a student, like teacher thing. He's just one of my mentors because he is so incredibly good at everything that I try to do. Like just amazing at everything that I try to do. And so it's just kind of like this de facto, like I learn from the guy every time I'm around him. So,
well, not to continue to say nice things about him, but I think what it is that
we'll edit all this
once
out.
once he gets his teeth into something, then he distills the essence of it down, breaks it apart, and then it's systemizable. Then he can sort of learn to make the best sourdough bread or hummus and whatever. And photography, like he just decided he was going to get into photography, and then he's just sort of not mastered it, but he told us he's making as much money or more money selling photographs. The photographs are incredible. I don't know if you've seen them. You should check them out.
Stunning. They're stunning. Yeah, absolutely.
If he's going to do a thing, he's going to do it right.
He texts me those photos all the time just because I say how stunning they are, because he's very needy emotionally. He needs constant validation. So, So anyway, I'm like, dude, every once in a while you should just send me a crappy photo. I could be like, this is not your best work, Patrick.
This is my thumb.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. I didn't know they had a lens cap on a phone.
He's also offering a big discount, but it's only available for a short time. So head to patricksheridan.com to find out about the Brass Gym virtual workshop, June 14th to 18th, 2021. Next question. Neil, also on Instagram. This is another good question.
Go, Neil.
He asked, what's the difference between playing in various ensembles, chamber, orchestra, band, commercial, etc.? Why don't I go first on this one since you went first on the last one?
Good.
That's, like I said, it's a really good question. If you want to get really technical, I have found that the biggest difference between playing in those different settings is, if I had to choose one thing, is actually articulation. And that's like really simplifying, like oversimplifying things. But if I had to choose one thing, it's articulation. And kind of a more macro view of it is that it's like speaking different languages. And if you use a French accent to speak Mandarin, it's going to be bad. And if you use a Russian accent to speak Spanish, it's going to be bad. And if you bring like the consonant sounds from German over to Japanese, it's not going to sound very good. And so you really have to get fluent with whatever style you are trying to play in. And the good news is it's never been easier to get fluent. And someone who's not, by the way, and part of that's just, I mean, if you're really young, then great, you have a pass. But someone who's playing in a style where they clearly have not done the homework has just shown that they haven't done the homework, right? Because it's no longer an issue of, okay, do you have enough money to purchase like 50 jazz records and to listen to them all, right? You can get all of it for free on YouTube. And if you don't have internet access, then I guess that's a different issue. But you have to immerse yourself, right? Like my son is taking Spanish immersion, kindergarten, first grade. He's on like a Spanish immersion track all the way through elementary and middle school. And half of his day is in Spanish. Like he spoke not a word of it when he got there. You listen to his accent, it's really good. Like it's really, really, really good because he's just listening to someone. Last year's teacher was from Costa Rica. This year's teacher is from Puerto Rico. But he's hearing people who their first words were in Spanish. That's what they've spoken their whole lives, and both of them speak English amazingly well, but it's their second language. And so that's what you need to do. And obviously, commercial or jazz or that kind of thing, and Neil didn't even use the term jazz, but those are gigantic umbrellas, obviously, but I think it's and that's what I find is that when you do the listening, the different forms of commercial music, or the difference between playing in a brass quintet versus in orchestra. And again, I don't want to make it sound like articulation's the only difference, because tone and note releases and all that, but note beginnings I find are very, very, very different. If I played with orchestral note beginnings in Boston brass, then I would have had half of, if not the entire band, telling me that I was behind the beat or that I needed to be driving a little bit more or that kind of thing. And for sure, if I sat down at the end of the National Symphony brass section at the Kennedy Center and was putting quintet left edge on anything at all, then they would be like, yeah, we like hanging out with Hitz, but hey, Dumaine, do not call him to sub ever again, because it sounds ridiculous. So what do you think, Lance?
I think that it boils down to what is my role, what is my job, and how do I do that to the best of my ability. What I mean by that is, if I'm in a large ensemble situation, then my job is to play as part of the section that I'm in and to pay attention to the hierarchy, both within interpersonal and musical. So are we in a support role, or we have a melody, or we have a counter melody? Are we in octaves above the tubas, or are we in cahoots with the trombone section, or are we an octave below the clarinets? And so what's our job? And then how do we communicate side to side? And then how do we interpret what the conductor is showing and or telling and deliver this thing consistently? And then if you're a soloist, then your job is to have a clear vision for what you want to execute and to communicate that ideally with your playing and not with your words, to indicate changes in speed, be as clear as you can, and communicate with the conductor with an eye towards or an ear towards what the ensemble is doing if you're playing in front of a band, for example, or if you're playing with an accompanist or a collaborative pianist, that you're super clear about what it is that not that you shouldn't talk and have conversations about it, but our job as soloist and pianist is it's a conversation. So I need to make sure that I'm being clear in the conversation and not talking over the person, because they have a musical contribution to make as well, and they have musical ideas that I wouldn't thought of. And then in chamber music, my job is to have opinions that I hold with a loose fist, like believe in them, but be willing to change them, and have one, like show up with an opinion. This is what I think. And by the way, as a side note, in every instance, you should be prepared. That hopefully goes without saying, but you should just, by the time you get there, you ought, unless it's like you're reading the tunes on the gig, which can happen. And if that is the case, then you better be able to read, which is in your control as well. But soapbox aside, then having
You
an opinion,
should be prepared.
you should. You should. And so have a strong opinion and then be willing to change it based on more data. And then lastly, I would say in terms of commercial, the way I interpreted commercial was different. It was I interpreted it as if you were on a recording session, which doesn't necessarily mean commercial, but that's the way I heard it. And in that instance, the way I see my role is to shut the heck up and to deliver the thing exactly the same way over and over and over again, unless I'm told we want it to be more or less like blank. Because I've been on the other side. I guess, after you've done a bunch of gigs in a bunch of different settings, you've seen it from both sides. I've conducted groups. I've led sections. I've been in chamber groups. I've led chamber groups. I've soloed. I've been in recording sessions. I've produced recording sessions. So I try and put myself in the shoes of the conductor or the engineer or the producer or the band leader. If it's a small gig, like it's a chamber group, but it's definitely led by a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I try and put myself in their shoes and think, well, what are their needs at this moment, and how can I best serve that? And in a recording session, the way I can best serve it is not to breathe all over the place, not to try out different volumes and styles, but to just deliver this one thing and just assume that if there's an issue, they're going to tell me, because they're the ones who have to stitch it together after the fact. So if I did it like legato one time and staccato the second time, well, then it's going to be a nightmare to put together. So there's a lot more there's a lot more going on behind my eyeballs than you would think.
Well, that's actually not hard. Not hard to clear that bar.
I'd argue if I disagreed.
Yeah, that I agree. And the way to have an opinion is that you have to have a crystal clear idea of exactly what you are trying to sound like, and the only way to know how to speak Spanish is by hearing a whole bunch of Spanish. Right. And so that's or as Warren Deck describes it, where what we're playing is all of our playing abilities are a window, and then what we're trying to play is the scene out the window. And if you have any holes in your playing, then the window is smudgy, right? Like you can't really see crystal clear, but there has to be something really interesting out the window. And that's the thing, is if you're playing a style or in a setting that you basically have no idea how it's supposed to go and you haven't done your homework, then your window can be spotless, and what is on the other side of the window is not very interesting, or it's not you've got things in your scene which don't go in this scene, and not in a cool, hip, artistic way, just because there are times when it's it'd be cool if I put a skyscraper in the back of this this serene meadow view, and it's that is cool, but we hired you to be a part of the meadow. Right. we need some mountain flowers, not a skyscraper. Yeah. So
I like the window thing. I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So many people focus so much on the window, but to me, the window is the cost of entry, right? Mm-hmm. That's the window has to be spotless. But all of the musicians that I will travel long distances for, or have traveled long distances for, I mean, yes, they all have immaculate windows, but it's all what's on the other side of the window. That's why I'm driving. And to get on my soapbox for a second, I've heard a whole lot of performances at Tuba Euphonium conferences that have windows that, like, some are, there are a number of them where I'm like, that part of the window was cleaner than mine is, right? It's like, constantly just like raising the bar in my head. But like the scene that's on the other side, it's almost never like bad, but it's just kind of like, I wouldn't, if it wasn't a tuba, and if it wasn't like a friend or colleague or whatever, like I wouldn't cross the street to pay money to see that scene, right? And there's some of the most interesting things I've ever seen have been at tuba conferences. But yeah, there's kind of a lot of, and that's not just tuba. I've just been to a lot of those. Like we've been to all the brass conferences. A lot of it is just so focused on the window, which is just not interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
It just isn't. I just don't really care.
It reminds me that Houchin Horns aims to spread the joy of music through providing the highest level of products, services, and resources to the brass playing community.
Reminded me of that too. I was going to suggest that you do that spot.
Because I remember that one time that I learned that Houchin Horns is a premier brass pro shop with an impressive lineup of the best instruments, accessories, sheet music, and more.
Did you say accessories?
Did I? Well, if you buy them, they will become your accessories.
Houchin Horns, building successes, one horn at a time.
Yep. I remember that one time that Houchin Horns stocks the finest ranks of brass instruments, including Adams, Bach, and Conselmer, Eastman, Shires, Engelbert, Schmidt, Paxman, Thien, and Yamaha, and many others. You know what else?
What?
You know what else?
What?
You remember that time that Houchin Horns sells their unique Veris brands products, especially designed by the craftsmen and pro musicians of Houchin Horns? Well, it's not only that, but they also do repairs and customizations in-house. You can browse vintage and consignment instruments at houchinhorns.com. They have free in-person virtual equipment consultations with their team of professional musicians. And you can enter the promo code Junkies11 at discount online checkout. Words, order, face, envelope. You can enter the promo code Junkies11 at online checkout to receive $500 off your purchase of a new instrument from houchinhorns.com. You want to know what vintage and consignment horns they have right now?
Sure.
I just clicked on the thing. I hope I can find it, because that would be sad if I'm not able to. Here, let's see what tubas and euphoniums they have.
Unless it comes with a larger house for the same mortgage payment currently, then I'm not really looking to add any vintage horns in my house. That'd be a good stress test for my marriage.
Well, you know what? They actually have financing through a firm. I see. I didn't realize that. Maybe that was in the thing, but that's pretty cool too. So go check them out. Thank you very much, Houchin
they're
Horns,
great. They're great
for being our newest sponsor. Thank you, Mark, and the folks at Houchin Horns.
And check out his Brass Junkies episode while you're at it.
Absolutely.
All right. Here's another question, Lance.
What?
Yep. Last question. You ready?
I doubt it.
Jenny on Facebook asked.
Is she from the block?
Lance recently mentioned that he is recording an album this summer. Can he tell us more about that?
Well, I guess now I have to do it. So
look at that. We are out of time. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Sorry. I should let you continue.
So I decided that, I recorded an album 20 years ago. And I thought about...
You old.
I old. 21, maybe 22 years ago. Is that right? Something like that.
It's been a while.
I kind of feel like Gould when I asked Gould if he was going to have another record like the Cafe 1930. And he said that he didn't really have enough tunes that he dug enough to go through the process of doing it. And so a whole bunch of things conspired to give me this idea. One was the passing of Sam Palafian, who's, heaven knows we've talked about Sam. And so he wrote a couple of pieces called Relentless Grooves, and we had been in discussion, in fact, on the show about where the Relentless Grooves series might go and other, places that series could musically go geographically. Is that an actual sentence? It is. Well, I just said it full stop. And so
I would say we can edit it, but I don't think that sentence is editable.
No, I don't think so either. Just boop. So then I decided to
make it sound like you cursed for like 4 straight seconds, while completely maintaining a cheerful demeanor, which is like real
cheerful demeanor,
psycho killer stuff. So
hey, thank you.
There you go.
I appreciate cheerful demeanor. So I also then were good buddies with Tom Holtz, who wrote these 3 grooves. And then it occurred to me, oh, there's grooves. There's a bunch of these grooves, and we talk about groove all the time. We talked about it in Boston Brass constantly to get the groove right on whatever it is what we were doing. So then I started poking around to see what grooves, what musical grooves there were. And so I found one of the first things I found is the thing I'm probably going to record first, which is a jazz. It's a Bach. If Bach wrote a jazz cello suite, this would be it. The composer, whose name escapes me until I found it. His name is Amonti. What's his first name? Lucio Franco Amonti. He was born in 1977, so he's 43. And this he is young, and so it's in the same. So there's it follows the same form as the Bach cello suites. So a prelude and an allemande and a courante. Well, the Bourrée 1 and 2 are groove 1 and 2, and so there's some double stops and some things in it, which I'm just going to take advantage of technology now and record both parts. And so I'm using it as an opportunity to explore grooves, and then also to just connect with people that I haven't connected, either have wanted to connect with and haven't musically. For example, Chanel Critchlow is writing a piece for 2 Flugebones that she and I are going to play and Holtz. So I'm going to play Holtz's duet with him. And there's a piece of technology. I'm hoping that I think I'm getting a couple of these things. I shouldn't talk about it because I don't know if it's not a done deal yet, but it will make remote recording in real time possible. Otherwise, I'll record a part and send it off to Holtz and vice versa. And so looking for folks like Tom Holtz, I'm going to drag you onto some tunes. I'm hoping to drag Patrick onto some tunes. I'm hoping to reconnect with, if you have itchy fingers, maybe it's eczema. Consult your doctor. So right now it's going to be the 2 Relentless Grooves that Sam did. And I'm actually looking to kind of not reinvent them, but sort of when Andrew and I were in Boston Brass, we would do the 3rd and 4th movement of the Armenian one that he did for me and expand it so that Andrew could just sort of stretch and improvise on a bass line. Originally it was just a percussive bass line, but we did it with just the 2 of us. And so I'd like to expand the tunes and have more pockets like that to breathe and allow whoever I'm grooving with the chance to do that. So it's not just, Matt Trotman recorded Relentless Grooves, the first one, the Cuba one. And my intent is not to build a better mousetrap. It's to just sort of take the DNA that Sam created and then just put more breath into it, just sort of allow for things to happen in between the musical ideas. So those 2 pieces, this Grooves 1 and 2, there's a guy in, I want to say it's Minnesota, I think, named, hang on, his name escapes me.
This is what happens when you get old. You can't remember anything.
Where did it go? Oh, no. It's everywhere.
This makes for good radio.
Kaczynski's his last name, is that right? I can't remember. He wrote these 3, they're called pocket grooves. That's not the right name. If only you had told me ahead of time we were going to do this. Oh, wait, that's right, you did. Oh, yeah. I'm right. Gene Kaczynski. Pocket grooves for bassoon and percussion. So there's a joropo, a choro, and this samai, which are for bassoon and hand percussion, and then a thing called Get It, which is the unofficial 4th movement of this thing, that are really cool. I don't think anyone's done them on Euphonium yet. The bassoon ones, the versions on bassoon are just awesome. And then to round it out, I've talked to our dear friend who is called David Cutler. He wrote this piece called El Alacran, which is the scorpion. I talked to him about turning that into the funky scorpion and kind of reinventing it, doing the same thing that we talked about before. Just take the DNI. This was for percussion and euphonium, and to just look at ways to expand it, change it, morph it. I'm also going to hit up, he doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to hit up Mr. Nickens about either doing the blues for unaccompanied tuba, which I've done a few times up an octave, or just to hit him up to about, let's have some more tunes. I have a couple of former students who are really good DJs and music producers that I'm planning on hitting up to collaborate with. So it's looking for a way to collaborate with folks and make music that's groove based, and call it, right now it's called Grooves, and then in parentheses, Relentless and Otherwise. And actually, I mentioned this to you, I'm thinking about documenting the process. So with Holtz, get him on a call like this and talk about, why did you write this piece? Who did you write it for? What was difficult about it? What do you like? What six, da, 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 and then let's set about putting it together. Yeah. And so we kind of, like you and I, figuring out, well, let's expand this here. Let's add 4 bars there. Actually, that's open. You do what you want. Let's add or whatever. Should we add percussion? If so, then who should that be? And then bring them into the conversation. I have some buddies that I was in the Air Force Band with, and other just groups that I've had, like Dan Hostetler's a dear, like one of my favorite drummers. It would be a shock, or it'd be a shame not to include him, or Rick Parsons, who was part of the LaDuke and the Malcontents. Mm-hmm. So look for ways to reconnect with people and collaborate and make music at the same time. So that's that.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really good stuff.
Thank you for asking, whoever it was that asked it.
That would be Jenny.
Jenny, my cousin. Yeah. So, and the other potentially interesting thing is I'm using a variety of instruments. So some of it will be on euphonium, some will be on flugobone, some will be, I have a marching euphonium here, and some will be on valve trombone. So, and then, toys and shakers and probably some ukulele and some hand percussion stuff and, nonsense.
You should be required to get a government license to operate a valve trombone, because most people shouldn't. Mm-hmm. Prove me wrong. So, well, this was great. This was good stuff. We've thank you, Ryan, Neil, Jenny, and thank you, Lance.
No, thank you, Andrew.
Really, yeah, just amazing.
Thank you.
You're truly an inspiration.
Truly rural.
May 23rd. HitzAcademy.com, inside the practice room with Demondre Thurman is going to be awesome. So go check that out. And we do have one more question that we're going to save for the bonus episode, which we always have. We'd always do a little bit more with each guest, and for this one, we're going to do one more question. And the question that we're gonna hit for next week is and this is a Patreon patron named Jennifer. This is a different person than Jenny. I don't know if they know each other. There are a lot of them, so I doubt they all know each other. On Facebook, if you could hear any current or former brass players host their own podcast, who would it be? That got my brain really churning. So I had like instantly had some answers. So but we're going to that'll be for the bonus episode. If you go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, then you can learn how to become a financial supporter of the show for a small amount of money per episode. And you get a back catalog of a lot of bonus episodes. We're coming up on 70, close to 70 bonus episodes at this point. Plus, we have other monthly content that comes out. Some is pedagogical, some is more entertaining, but that's all exclusive to Patreon patrons. And thank you to everybody who's left a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get the Brass Junkies. And thank you for anyone who's told a friend. That was the most common way that people who filled out our listener survey found the podcast, was someone told them about it. So yeah, thank you to everybody who's done that. And Lance, if there's not anything else, then I think we're gonna sign off.
Let's sign off.
Is your heart content?
It is, and my bladder is full.
And that is gonna do it for another episode of the Brass Junkies.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.